As the talks are now once again derailed, I thought a word of caution was in order. So here it is. Pakistan may deserve credit for helping bring the United States and Iran to the table. If the talks do actually lead to a settlement, that would be no small diplomatic achievement. But Pakistan needs to be very careful not to overestimate what that achievement actually means. Because there is a big difference between bringing two sides together and becoming responsible for what happens next. And right now, there's a risk that Islamabad is seen not just as a facilitator, but as a much more active participant. Almost like a state that can help guarantee the process, reassure both sides, and maybe even help design a durable settlement. That is where the problem arises. The trust deficit between the United States and Iran is not just about misunderstanding. It is about history. Think about the JCPOA. From Iran's point of view, it made real nuclear concessions, accepted intrusive inspections, and reduced parts of the program, while the economic side of the deal remained vulnerable to politics in Washington. Then Donald Trump was elected and subsequently pulled out of the agreement. So from Tehran's perspective, the lesson is very simple. Even if you sign a deal, that does not mean that the United States will stick to it. And that creates a problem that no mediator can easily solve. Pakistan cannot guarantee American compliance. Realistically, no country can, especially not on something like a phased sanctions relief or long-term implementation. Settlements negotiated under conditions of deep mistrust tend to depend more on long-term sequential acts of compliance rather than just immediate reciprocal reliefs. So if Pakistan starts acting like it can provide those kinds of assurances, it risks taking on a role it simply cannot fulfill. And then there's the Iranian side. A lot of analysis assumes that Pakistan has context in Tehran, that Pakistan understands who matters and who can deliver. But that may be a dangerous assumption. Iran is not likely to be operating from a position of political unity. Its leadership structure has come under pressure from the war, from targeted killings, and from internal strain. It is not clear who actually has the final word in Iran. And there are several examples that point to this direction. At one point, the United States Vice President J.D. Vance suggested that the delegation that Washington was dealing with in the first round of talks in Islamabad did not seem to have the final say. Whether or not that claim is entirely fair, it reflects a broader concern that people sitting across the table may not necessarily be the ones who can ultimately bind the Iranian system. And then there was the public criticism of Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi faced over his social media messaging, which again raised questions about internal discipline and whether the different parts of the Iranian system were fully aligned. And beyond that, there have also been reports of friction within the power structure itself, including tensions between senior IRGC officials and key political leadership. That does not mean that the entire state has collapsed. It clearly does not. But it does mean that outside actors should be more cautious about assuming they fully understand who has the influence, who has the final authority, and who can actually commit Iran over time. So yes, Pakistan may still have enough access or influence to help both sides get into a room, but that is not the same thing as having deep leverage. Iran coming to the table, as much as it might brilliantly reflect on Pakistan's diplomatic efforts, could also simply reflect circumstantial necessity on part of the Iranians. Perhaps because the military situation is too costly, or because negotiations are, for now, the least bad option. Even the tug-of-war of whether or not to come for negotiations belies any claims of political unity in Tehran. If that is true, then Pakistan should be very transparent about what its role actually is. It should say clearly, we opened channels, we helped convene talks, but we are not guarantors and we are not enforcers. That matters because if the immediate conflict cools down, Iran may still go through certain internal contestations. And if Pakistan is seen as having relied or leaned too closely toward one side, or one faction, or one reading of the Iranian system, that being against the hardliners and in favor of a settlement, it could be accused of being a deceptive or a biased mediator, severely tarnishing Pakistan's potential relations with yet another of its neighboring country. On the other hand, if the conflict resumes, Pakistan could again be accused of acting to buy time for the United States. And that is exactly the kind of trap Pakistan should avoid. Because the last thing Pakistan needs is to get pulled into another neighboring conflict where it starts informally sorting or categorizing actors into good or bad camps, backing the people it thinks are pragmatic, while dealing the other as the real problem. Pakistan has prior experience where this kind of thinking could lead to. So the smart policy is actually a narrow one. Take credit for opening the door, help the talks happen, encourage de-escalation, but do not pretend Pakistan can guarantee American follow-through, and do not pretend it fully understands or can shape Iran's internal politics. Facilitating the talks is an achievement, owing the outcome is a liability. This, I'm sure, they understand at the top level. Thank you.